actually think that this contract is going to be truly transformative for the children and schools in Washington, D.C. And I think by virtue of that, it will actually have an impact across the nation. So let me just give you the quick and dirty on what this contract does. First of all, this contract is a great contract for students, first and foremost. And I think that thinking about a teachers union contract from the vantage point of students is something that is largely unheard of. But I think it was something that was important, really important for us as we were going through this process. But it's also good and fair for teachers as well. So from the teacher perspective, some of the most important things first are that we're putting a lot more resources into professional development of teachers. So we have identified the areas where teachers say they need the most support in differentiated instruction and inclusion and data-driven decision making, and we are going to focus on making sure that they get the professional development in those areas that they need. The second is that teachers and the union will have more say in the decisions that go on in their schools every day. And that was an important piece to the puzzle as well, because contrary to what people often say, I don't think that teachers are the problem in this system. I think that teachers are the solution to the incredible challenges that we face. And to have them engaged in looking at the challenges and figuring out, how they can play a part in solving those problems, we think is an incredibly important piece to this contract. And then the third thing is that teachers will be compensated, finally, at the levels that we think begin to get them to the place in society where they should be. And so what we're looking at is base raises about 21% over the life of the contract, which in this economy, as you know, is almost unheard of. And then there are bonus possibilities on top of that. So those are sort of the major advantages from the teacher standpoint. From the administration standpoint, we feel great about the contract because we address the three, what I would say, are perennial issues in collective bargaining agreements in public education today: lockstep pay, seniority, and tenure. So I'll talk about each of those first in terms of lockstep pay. If you know anything about education and the way that we pay teachers, basically it's all based on how many years of service that you have. And so you could have, right now in our system, a first year or second year teacher who's doing absolutely phenomenal things for kids. The data proves that, and they are still one of the lowest paid people in the district. And you could have a 30-year veteran who is not doing a whole lot of anything, and they will be one of the highest paid teachers in the district. That system does not make any logical sense for an organization that's trying to drive towards results. So what we've been able to negotiate is the fact that the district now will be able to implement a paper performance plan that allows us to radically change the amount of money that teachers are getting paid based on how they're doing as an individual teacher. So right now, just to give you a sense of perspective, a first-year teacher in the system makes about $40,000 a year. That same teacher on the new paper performance plan, who is seeing the greatest growth academically for their kids, is teaching in a high-need school, et cetera, could make more than $70,000 a year. Our most senior teachers in the system currently make about $68,000 a year. That same teacher teaching in a high-need school, knocking it out for kids, could make up to $146,000 a year. So we are talking about massive swings in the amount of money that we are able to pay teachers based on whether they're producing results for the kids who need it the most. And that, I think, is going to be a critical element to us being able to retain the best talent in the system and to be able to recruit new talent into DC public schools. The second is seniority. And the way that seniority plays out currently in our contract is that at an individual school, if you have a lowering of enrollment and you have to cut your budget and you have to move a teacher out of your school, right now you are required to do that by seniority. So last in, first out. This new contract allows the school to make that decision by performance and quality instead. So it's not just the automatic decision that this person has to go because they have the least seniority, but it's really putting everybody on an equal playing field and saying who's bringing the most value to this school. We're going to keep those people, and we're going to make decisions about who to access based on their performance and the value that they're adding for kids. It's a huge, huge accomplishment. And then the last is tenure. As you all well know, the common wisdom in this country right now is that once you have tenure as a public school teacher, you have a job for life regardless of performance. That is no longer the case in Washington, D.C. Through this contract and through our new evaluation system that we've been implementing this year, essentially we have a situation where if you are rated as ineffective as a teacher, you are let go from the system. So in what used to happen here and what happens in districts across the country is if you get an ineffective rating, then it triggers a whole lot of bureaucracy and a process that you have to go through, that sort of thing. That is no longer the case. Now, if you have that rating, you are removed from the system. If you are minimally effective, which is one step up from ineffective, you have a step hold on your pay, which is important because we're not going to continue to pay you more and more money if you're not producing results because you have a step hold on your pay, and if you are minimally effective for 2 years in a row, then you are removed from the system. The other thing that this contract does is it brings an important provision, which we call mutual consent, which means that in order to place a teacher in a school, both the teacher and the school have to agree that it's a good match. And this is important because what has long happened in school districts across the country is this forcing of teachers that happens. So let me just give you an example. One of the strategies that the U.S. Department of Education actually advocates for a turnaround of a school is to reconstitute the school, which means you make every staff member reapply for their jobs, and only the staff members who make it through that process can stay. And then the school and the new leadership get to hire the rest of their staff according to what their needs are. The problem is that according to our current contract, all of those teachers who are being displaced from a current school still have a right to a job in the system. So what essentially happens is if you can't find a job there and you can't find a job anywhere else, we actually have to force you into a placement somewhere. And this can have really, really negative impacts on the system because, for example, last year we reconstituted two high schools, Dunbar and Anacostia. And when you reconstitute two large schools like that, you're talking about 200 or some odd folks potentially who are out, who must be forced onto other schools. Now we only have 10 comprehensive high schools in the city. So even if each of those schools is hiring, 20 new teachers, which is a whole lot of new teachers, they essentially would be in the position where they have to have all these people who couldn't keep their jobs at these two schools forced on them, which puts them in an incredibly bad position. So what this new contract does is says, if you cannot find a mutual consent placement where the principal agrees to accept you, then we're not going to force you into a position. In fact, if you are ineffective or minimally effective in that circumstance, we remove you from the system overall. We have the right to do that. And if you have opted into the pay for performance plan that I talked about before, and at any point you can't find a job in the system, you also are removed. So it really is a major movement towards giving our administrators, our principals, who we hold accountable for how their schools are doing and what results their kids are producing, we're giving them a different set of tools, because essentially now, where they have been sort of handicapped and strapped in the past in terms of their ability to hire and fire the people that they believed were going to get them to that end goal, now we have a completely different set of rules where they have a tremendous amount of authority on autonomy over making sure that they can staff their schools in the way that they believe is going to best serve their kids. So that is the